Welcome to Financial Aid Workshop. Today we have Brian from Valparaiso University. Thank you for joining us, Brian.
Yeah, very happy to be here, and thanks very much for the invite to talk a little bit about financial aid and the FAFSA this morning. Would you like me to just go ahead and get into it?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. So, hey, everybody. My name is Brian O'Rourke, and I am the Vice President for Enrollment at Valparaiso University. So that means what I do at Valpo is I oversee the admissions and financial aid process, and I've been doing this work for a really long time. So I love the opportunity to talk to students about how we complete the FAFSA and sort of the overall process. So what we're going to talk about this morning, is we're going to talk about some terminology. We're going to talk a little bit about the different types of aid. We're going to talk about the application process and the FAFSA. We're going to talk about where your eligibility comes from a little bit, and then we're going to talk about sort of just the last few steps after you apply. And then, of course, any questions that you have at the end. You'll see here I have at the bottom a web link, studentaid.ed.gov. You'll see throughout my presentation I have several different links at the bottom if you want to take a picture or write them down. Also, we're recording this, obviously, so you'll have an opportunity to see it. Everything I'm going to cover today, for the most part, is in different web sources. So a lot of it's available out there. I've just compiled it all in one place to talk about it this morning. But certainly you can go to the different websites that I have listed for more information and a little more detail. So with that, let's get into it a little bit. So financial aid. So the basic structure of financial aid, how it works overall, is your equation of need is a cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution, or what's called an EFC, equals your eligibility for aid. So let's unpack that a little bit and see what we're talking about when we talk about those three things. So the cost of attendance, that's the total number, the total amount that a school estimates it will cost to go to their college or university for 1 year. So if you've been looking at colleges, either going on college visits or looking at their websites, or, just sort of however you're doing your college search, niche.com or whatever it might be, you're probably looking at tuition and fees and then maybe room and board when you're looking at costs. You want to understand that the cost of attendance and your financial aid eligibility is based on a number that's a little bit higher than that, because schools include things like books and supplies and miscellaneous expenses and traveling back and forth to the school, and all these different things that are basically extra costs that, are part of going to college for a year. It even includes things like, having a pizza in the dorm on a Friday night when you're sick, eat in the cafeteria. So like, what do they really think it will cost? So that number is going to be usually several, it could be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 or $6,000 higher than the tuition and fees and room and board that you're probably looking at. The good news is that your financial aid eligibility is based on this total cost of attendance. So that means the financial aid potentially could even help you pay for your books and buying a computer or different things you're going to need to while you're in college. So then the other big number is the expected family contribution. And what this number is this is basically a number that the federal government creates when you complete the FAFSA, that estimates what they believe that your family can afford to pay for 1 year to go to school. So the cost of attendance is what it costs to go to that school for a year. The expected family contribution is what, based on a federal methodology, a federal process, a federal equation, what they think you can afford to pay to go to school for a year. Now, you see their expected family contribution. Financial aid and the U.S. government assumes that sending a student to college for a year is a family investment. Whether or not your parents or your family are helping you pay for school, the assumption is that if you're, under the age of 25, that your student, that you're going to school and that your family is going to help you with your paying for your education. And so because of that, much of the information that you're going to be asked to provide when you're applying for financial aid is family information. Without your family information, it's very difficult to apply for financial aid. So this is the point where I always make sure I tell students and families, just by applying for financial aid, by filling out the FAFSA and submitting it to schools, you're not required to do anything in terms of paying for college. So just by your parents or your family helping you fill out the FAFSA does not mean they're required to help you pay for school. It just means that without their information, it's very difficult to apply for financial aid. By submitting a FAFSA, it also doesn't mean that you have to then take out the aid that you receive as part of your FAFSA. So most students, when they fill out the FAFSA, loans will be part of their financial aid package, part of the offer of financial aid they receive to help pay for school. But you don't have to take out loans. And just by submitting the FAFSA, it doesn't require you to do anything with the loans. It just alerts you that you're eligible for those. So you can decide at the very end of the process which aid you're going to accept. And so, again, it's a family contribution number. It's a family process. And so what that means is you're going to need some family information to complete the form. So let's talk a little bit about then the different sources and types of financial aid. So there's sort of two main areas of financial aid. One is gift aid. That's the free money. That's the good kind. That's the money you don't ever have to pay back. And those are basically the scholarships and the grants. And we're going to talk a lot about those today in terms of what makes school affordable, because there are different scholarships based on financial need and a variety of, based on academic performance and a variety of different things that will help you pay for school. And that's free money you don't ever have to pay back. And then there's state and federal grants, as well as in some cases, grants from the schools themselves to help you pay for school. That's based on financial need. It's based on applying for financial aid. And again, that's money you don't ever have to pay back or pay to the school. It's free money to help you go to school. The other part of it then is what's called self-help. And the self-help is the less fun kind. So the self-help are things like the student loans and the federal work study. Federal work study means you're going to get a job on campus as part of your financial aid award. The Department of Education is going to help pay your salary to have that job, and you put it towards different expenses that have to do with college. So when we're talking about gift aid, that's the free money. When we talk about self-help, that's the non-free money. That's either the loans or the money that you have to work for while you're in college. So let's talk about the fun stuff first, the gift aid. So let's talk about scholarships. So basically how the scholarships will work is there's a couple different kinds. So the first scholarships are the institutional scholarships that the colleges or universities provide themselves. And what you want to check is for any of the schools you're considering, do they have a separate deadline for scholarships? What scholarships are available? How do they help you pay for school? How does it work? So like as an example at Valpo, we have scholarships available, academic scholarships available for all students who have a 3.0 GPA or higher coming out of high school. And the amount of scholarship that you can receive is based on how high above 3.0 your GPA is. And so on our website, we publish our scholarships. So you can take a look and see sort of what those dollar amounts are, so you know your rough eligibility for the academic scholarships. But it also talks about the application process and understanding that sometimes some scholarships from the schools, you receive consideration just by applying to the school. So just by applying for admission, you automatically receive consideration for the scholarships. Some institutions, some schools require that you submit a separate form or application or answer separate questions. So every school where you're thinking of applying, you want to understand, first of all, what you have to do to apply for admission. And then second of all, are there any separate scholarships or a process or deadlines or whatever it might be that you need to pay attention to when applying for scholarships for that free money, and just understanding what type of scholarship assistance the schools may be offering you. Outside of those academic scholarships, there are then, other schools, some schools offer a variety of different what are called talent-based scholarships. So things like athletic scholarships, scholarships for music or theater or language and culture. Different schools have different scholarships available for students who excel in different things or have special talents that they're going to bring and perform or use at their university that may qualify you for some additional dollars. And so again, you want to make sure once you have your list of all of the schools you're going to be applying to, you look at those schools and understand what scholarships they have available. Are there any for your major? Are there any for your areas of interest? All those good things, and learn what those scholarship offers would be. Good way to learn that is also you can either just email or contact the admission offices or the financial aid offices, or of course they're on your websites. The websites. Separate from that, there's a lot of really great scholarships out there outside of the school scholarships to help students pay for school. So I listed here, you see a couple different popular scholarships, scholarships.com, collegescholarships.org, bigfuture.collegeboard.org. CapEx.org has different scholarships. There's a lot of different organizations out there that you go to the website and it pulls together scholarships from all over the place into one central area. And so what you do is you can basically go to these sections, you can do searches, or you can complete a profile, and then you'll start to receive emails about scholarships that you can receive or that you may be eligible for and should apply for. These outside scholarships can range anywhere from a couple $100 all the way up to several $1,000s, depending on how competitive the scholarship is. So if it's a scholarship that's sort of local to your neighborhood or your community or your church, those are probably a little bit smaller dollars. If you're applying for a national scholarship where only 10 students in the entire country receive that scholarship, they're probably a little bit larger dollars to help you pay for school. The important thing to note is that there is a lot of free money out there to help you pay for school. And right now, if you're a college senior, part of the process while you're applying to schools between November and February of your senior year should also be applying for scholarships and using these outside websites to look for scholarship dollars. And that's something that students need to just pay attention to as part of their college application process, is also just making sure you're aware of scholarships that are available and applying for those on a regular basis. Most scholarships that are available for students starting their freshman year in college have deadlines that are somewhere before February 1st or somewhere a little later, but generally before February 1st of your senior year is when you would have to submit those applications. So again, I tell all students, just be prepared that as you're applying for college, you also want to be applying for outside scholarships.
Brian?
Yes.
Sorry to quickly interrupt. There's about 5 more minutes. I just wanted to let you know before we start asking questions.
No, I appreciate it. So then we have the gift aid, which are the grants. The federal grant is the Pell Grant based on your EFC, so that federal FAFSA number. So if you complete the FAFSA and your EFC is in a range of $0 up to about $5,800, you can receive Pell Award money. There's also federal supplemental educational opportunity grant dollars, and then the Indiana State O'Bannon grant, which I want to make sure we touch on. So you see there's the website for the grant. The Indiana State grant is for students who are coming from high schools in Indiana and going to college in Indiana. You have to submit your FAFSA by April 15th to be eligible for consideration for the O'Bannon grant. If you see there, it depends on your EFC and how close to EFC your zero is. But in public university, you can qualify for up to $4,600. If you go to a private college or university in Indiana, you can get about $9,200. If you go to Ivy Tech, you can receive $3,500 a year. And then there's additional academic incentives on top of that, depending on, how strong, you are as a student in high school. So again, lots of free money in terms of the federal government, the state government, the schools to help you pay for school. We then talk about subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These are the free or less expensive loans to apply for. So these are the loans that just by submitting the free application for federal student aid, you receive consideration for these loans. There's an interest rate. These are loans that are going to be in your student's name that you don't begin filling out or applying for, repaying until you are graduate from high school. And so these are loans that just by submitting the FAFSA, you'll be considered for these loans to help you pay for school. These loans are fairly reasonable in terms of interest rates, and they're a good way to help pay for school if you are worried about your monthly payment to the school. There's then other opportunities for the family to apply for loans to assist in paying for school, and those are the PLUS loans. And then, as I said before, there's the federal work study, which is you get a job on campus, you look for the job, you show up, every day and work, and then you get dollars to help you pay for school through the federal work study program. The FAFSA was available in terms of October 1. You see here you can apply at studentaid.ed.gov, fafsa.ed.gov, or you can use the app My Student Aid. It's a free application for federal student aid. It just takes time. It does not cost you any money to apply for the to submit the FAFSA. I always recommend students learn. You need to apply each year, apply so you can learn what your eligibility is. Each year you want to reapply. Every year you're in college, the year before you have to reapply for financial aid. You're going to need to fill out an ID number to submit the FAFSA, and your one parent is going to need a FAFSA ID number, and then roughly 50% are selected for verification. What that means is that you may be asked after you submit the FAFSA to provide some additional documentation. This is pretty common. In terms of the parent information, as I said, it's the estimated family contribution. So they are going to ask you for parental information. If both parents live in the home and are married, both parents have to include information on the FAFSA. If your parents are divorced or separated, only the parent with whom the student lives half the time needs to be included on the FAFSA. If you are an adopted student, your adoptive parents need to be included information on the FAFSA. And if your biological parent is remarried, there's a step parent in the home, the step parent has to include their information on the FAFSA. How it basically works is they look at the income of the parents. They look at the amount of money and different things that families have. They divide it by the number of students in college, and that's where your EFC comes from. You can look at the EFC calculator at bigfuture.collegeboard.org to get an idea. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. You can get an idea of what your EFC may be. You can go to ifap.ed.gov and you can get an understanding of the methodologies. You can actually look up a 26-page document that explains how the FAFSA calculates your EFC. And every school is required to have a net price calculator as well on the school websites that will ask you a series of questions and then estimates what your likely financial aid would be. Just one more piece of information before we go to questions. One of the first things they're going to ask you on the FAFSA is, are you interested in loans? Are you interested in work study? I tell all students you have to check yes to the answer to these questions, because if you say no up front, then it will limit your consideration for those gift aid, that free money that we discussed earlier. If you tell schools at the beginning of the process that you're not going to be doing loans and you're not going to be doing work study, it may remove consideration for some of the gift aid, the free money that they give you. Say yes at the beginning of the process, find out your eligibility and all of the awards and dollars you may receive, and then you can decide at the end of the process that you're going to decline the loans or the work study. But by answering yes, you get a much better understanding of what your overall financial aid award will be, and also what free money you should get. So please, I recommend all students answer yes to that up front so that you don't limit your gift aid options. Here's my contact information at Valpo. If I can help as you go through the process, please feel free to call or email me. And then with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll do some questions.
Thank you, Brian, for that great information. Do you guys have any questions?
You know, either type the questions in the chat, or I guess it looks like if you want to unmute yourself, whatever's easiest. How long does it usually take to fill out the FAFSA? It usually takes about a half hour, 45 minutes, depending on the information. If you sit down with your parents and have their information ready to go, it's pretty quick. The one thing is, again, you're going to need an FSA, a FAFSA ID number first. That process takes a minute. You have to log in and create an ID, and then one of your parents will have to do that as well. And I should note, you can submit the FAFSA if you have a Social Security number, even if your parents do not, you're still eligible. If your parents did not file taxes or have an SSN, you can still submit the FAFSA with their information. Does it matter whether a parent or student is filling out the FAFSA? The student has to, well, the parent can assist, but the FAFSA needs to be in the student's name. It's going to ask the student for the questions, but there is quite a bit of parent information that needs to be included as well. Freshman, do I apply sooner or wait until senior year? The application process will start your senior year. So basically, the FAFSA is going to be open and available October 1st of your senior year in high school. So that's when you would start the application process. And then every year you're going to be in college the next year on October 1st, it reopens and you file again. But thank you very much for being here as a freshman. That's great to start this process early and be looking at scholarships. That's really great. It gives you a lot of time to prepare. But the FAFSA itself, your senior year is when you fill that out. junior in high school, but I also have a freshman college. I follow around the click, not sure on the work study. Yes, you can. So the question here in the chat is, can I change it if I already checked unsure to the work study? Yeah, what you do after you submit the FAFSA, there's a correction section. So you can just go and log into your FAFSA with the ID number, go to corrections, and you can make that change to yes, I want to do loans and work study. Again, at the very end of the process, once you get your offers from schools, once your student decides which school they're going to go to, then you finalize your financial aid award with that school and tell them the aid you're going to accept or decline. So yes, I would recommend go into the revision section, make that change, so that you don't limit your consideration for aid. I should say, if you put unsure, you're probably okay. If you put unsure, most schools will assume that you're going to do loans and work study, but just to be safe, I'd probably make the change. What else? A couple things, as questions continue about, do we have to file FAFSA when applying to college? You don't have to. Okay, let me say this. You don't have to apply for file a FAFSA. Here's what happens if you don't, though. If you don't file a FAFSA, the only assistance you're going to get in paying for school is any scholarships that either the school gives you or that you're considered for if you applied for outside scholarships that we talked about. That's it. You won't automatically receive anything else without filing a FAFSA. I will say, though, I tell all families, go ahead and apply, because you just don't really know. You don't really know what state or federal free money you'll qualify for, but more importantly, you don't really know what the schools will provide. So right now at Valpo, students can get an extra $1,000 or more in need-based assistance just by submitting the FAFSA. So just by letting us consider you for additional aid, you will automatically get more money. So that's why I tell all students, submit the FAFSA so you really understand what you're going to receive. But no, it's not required. You don't have to do it. A couple things to remember. I want to make sure you doesn't get lost here. Make sure, though, if you are doing a FAFSA and are thinking about going to a school in Indiana, you submit by April 15th so that you get consideration for the state O'Bannon grant. That's a lot of money to help you pay for school. That can be, if you go, to a private institution, that can be, $9,000 a year in free money to help you pay for school. So, if you look how quickly this adds up. So let's say you have an EFC of $2,000. Well, that would mean you would get about $6,000 from the O'Bannon grant. You get about $4,000 from the Pell Grant, so that's $10,000. Let's say you're going to Valpo and you get a $25,000 academic scholarship and $2,000 more in need-based aid. So that would mean you have $37,000 in free money between the state of Indiana, the federal government, and the institution to help you pay for school. So you see how the money, all these different sources start to add up really quickly in terms of free money and eligibility if you have financial needs. So that's why I really tell people to make sure you always submit the FAFSA just to see and meet that deadline for the O'Bannon grant. Question here about the income limit for the O'Bannon grant. It's not a firm income limit, it's an EFC limit. And so if you go to that webpage that I showed there, you can look up sort of the chart that'll show you what your EFC limit is. And then what I suggest is go to one of those websites I showed, collegeboard.com, where you can look up ifap.edu.gov, where you can look up and calculate your EFC. So calculate your EFC through one of those calculators, then look up the O'Bannon grant and see how much you'd qualify for based on your EFC, because income is part of the EFC. But it's not the whole thing. There's, assets in terms of, do you own property? You have a college savings, things like that. But by completing and understanding the calculator or estimator for your EFC, it will tell you if you qualify for the O'Bannon grant or Pell Grant money. Other questions? We've talked a lot about the free money, which is the good stuff. Understanding again that you will receive consideration for some of the loans. I think it's important to just be aware. The Stafford loans are the lower interest sort of caps. You can't borrow too much. Good good kind of loans, if you will. And we would say students, particularly, if you don't want to be paying out of pocket as much each month that you're in college, it's a good idea to at least consider those. They're low interest. They're capped in terms of monthly payments that you'll owe when you start repaying them back after college graduation. And what I tell all families is, think about it as an investment in yourself. You're investing in your college education to help you get a better job. And then once you have that job and have that salary, then you start paying back the loans $150 or $200 a month at a time. But it's an investment increasing your income and your earning potential later on down the road. So I'd say all students at least be open to the idea of some small loan.